All right, it's PreCon season again. We're back with Duskmourn Precons and another PreCon Mash-Up here on the MTG Thoughtcast. I'm Joseph. I'm your host, a PreCon enthusiast, and today we are mashing up the Jump Scare Precon from Duskmourn and the Reap the Tides Precon from 2020. It was the Commander Legends IEC Precon. So the real jump scare from Duskmourn is how ridiculous of a landfall deck they've printed in this Simic Precon with Zimone Mystery Unraveler at the helm of it. Got me thinking, got me brewing about the last time they did a landfall Precon and just how much better this one is. However, we can mash up the two of them using only cards from both Precons to make something absolutely unbelievable and make Zimone even better. So that's what we're going to do today. We're looking at using most of the Jump Scare Precon as the base of it, but man, do you get some cool stuff from the IEC Reap the Tides Precon. Before we dive straight into it, go ahead and give us a like, a comment, and a subscribe if you enjoy this type of content and you want to see more of it. It really helps us out, helps grow the channel. We've just crossed over 400 subscribers, and we're over the moon about it. Let's hit 500 soon. If you want to be a part of that, go ahead and hit all the buttons down below. And while you're there, if you want to jump into all the discussion about stuff like this, play some games with us, play some Commander games, you can join our Discord, linked down below as well, while you're down there, just doing all the things. And then you can come right back up here, and we'll get started on today's content. So, landfall is what we're talking about. It's one of the most broken mechanics that they've ever made because it just rewards you for playing the game, and Simic does it unbelievably well. They've done it twice now. This jump scare one is ridiculous, let me tell you. Looking through it, it's everything you want in a landfall deck. So all we're really doing is taking some of the heaters from the IEC Precon, which also IEC comes in the jump scare deck. It's ridiculous. So between the two deck lists, there's 186 unique cards, which is shocking that they're both the same mechanic and they're both trying to do the same thing, but there's so many unique cards in between them. It's 77 unique lands and 109 unique non-lands, so there was a lot to pare down from. What we did for the lands to start out, we cut 18 each of forests and islands, as well as cutting a Simic Guildgate and then whatever the tap land is called. It's non-typed, it just comes in, taps for green and blue. Get rid of that. Leaves you with 38 lands, which should be plenty in a deck like this. You could play this and decide you need a few more lands if you want to get a bit more of the landfall or if you're losing some consistency, but there's enough interaction, there's enough card advantage across all of these, especially with the face down cards that you're going to be using, that you should be seeing enough lands that 38 felt right to me. As I was going through the deck lists, I've never seen the card Oversimplify before. Oh my goodness, what a cool card. I can't wait to see this one in action. It's not a new card, it's just never come up in a game that I've played, and it made me so happy. I don't know if it's particularly good, but I just couldn't bring myself to cut it from this final deck list. Last thing before we talk about what the deck is what it isn't. There's very little interaction in this deck. So I'm normally, for these things, saying, hey, just stick with the two Precons, mash them up together, you're going to have a great deck. I think that you're going to be a little outpaced interaction-wise as far as this deck goes. There's a few counter spells, there's a handful of, like Reclamation Sage is in the final deck list here. But overall, I would be looking to build these and then add in some interaction. The scenario that I see you building this deck in is if 4 years ago you got the IEC Precon, as you should have because it's unbelievable, and maybe has been sitting on a shelf for a while because it's a little outpaced these days. All of a sudden, they print Zimone Mystery Unraveler, which is a 4-mana 3/3 human wizard with landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, you manifest Dread, which is look at the top two cards of your library, put one of them face down as a 2/2, the other in your graveyard. If it's the first time it's resolved. Otherwise, you get to just turn a permanent you control face up. So it's such a neat design space to be doing both landfall and face down creatures. So if you play a fetch land or like an Evolving Wilds or anything like that, you're going to manifest Dread. You get to pick of the top two cards which one goes into play, and then as soon as you crack it, you just get to flip that thing over. You're just putting stuff into play for free. So what I wanted to do here was give you an opportunity to maybe look back at that IEC Precon and go, man, what can we add in here that's just going to be absolute haymakers to the jump scare deck? And there's quite a few of them. So We're sticking with Zimone as the commander, just because, man, that landfall trigger is so cool. She's easier to put down than IEC. IEC is also, you got a target on your head. If you've got that in the command zone, I'm coming for you. So having something like Zimone is maybe a little more innocuous. I think it will play out as slightly more powerful than IEC in the command zone, but I think it's going to take a while for people to catch on to that. So by combining these decks, you get things like Ashaya, Soul of the Wild, that was not in the IEC Precon, that you get to play with the landfall trigger. All of your lands or stuff, your morphs come in, your manifests come in as lands, which will immediately trigger to flip themselves over. Oh my god, that's ridiculous. So you get access to things like that, but the jump scare deck doesn't have something like Avenger of Zendikar in it, or Rampaging Baloths, which are unbelievable things to flip over, or be casting, or be finding and playing, and making a ton of things. So we're using the IEC Precon to just completely turbocharge what the jump scare deck is doing. So things that we were looking for, we want to keep in things like Retreat to Coral Helm, because Landfall Scry 1 is super good because you can stack that with Zimone. Just Scry 1, maybe put that card to the bottom, then Manifest Dread. So you get to kind of look at the top 3 cards as compared to the top 2 whenever you're manifesting. What we didn't want was things like Retreat to Kazandu, which is just landfall for landfall's sake. So what we're trying to do now is, again, flip into things like Rampaging Baloths, flipping them over and then continuing the landfalls from there to make a huge board that all is essentially coming in just because you're playing lands in your deck. So the way I've got this split, there's about 23 landfall cards in the deck. This is things that either have good landfall triggers like IEC, like Tatuva. These are all the landfall payoffs. And then things like Sakura Tribe Elder, Rampant Growth, ramp spells that are going to get you additional landfall triggers. So there's 23 of those. The coolest one is Disorienting Choice, which is a new card from the Jump Scare Precon. It's 4 mana for a sorcery. It says, for each opponent, choose up to 1 target artifact or an enchantment that player controls. For each permanent chosen this way, its controller may exile it. Then if one or more of the chosen permanents are still on the battlefield, you search your library for up to that many land cards and put them on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So you basically are giving your opponents the choice to get rid of their own stuff. Notably, this gets around Hexproof and Shroud as well because it doesn't target. You give them the choice to exile it or give you extra landfall triggers. So this is going to be really good for ramp early on. And it's going to be really good for interaction and landfall triggers late in the game. Love having stuff like that here. You get Maloku the Clouded Mirror from the IEC Precon as well, which just allows you to return a land you control to your hand to make a token. These get ridiculous. All of the Karoo lands are in here. The Jungle Basin, you have the Coral Atoll, and the Simic Growth Chamber. Those are all of your enters. It taps for 2 mana, but it enters tapped and you have to bounce a land to your hand. These become really good because you get extra landfall triggers from all of them. There is a total of 15 basic lands in the deck because there's so many good non-basics across the entire deck. Really encourage you to check out the deck list and just see how many really cool lands are in the deck. You get a lot of utility across those. As far as win cons go, we get to add some really cool ones like Trench Behemoth from the IEC Precon, which is a 7 mana 7/7 Kraken. You get to return a land you control to your hand to untap it, and it gains hexproof until the end of turn. So you could functionally, if someone's trying to target it as its Manifest Dread, you could crack a fetch land, it flips itself over, then you could return that land to your hand to untap it and give it hexproof. And then it just has landfall, target creature and opponent controls attacks during its next combat phase if able. So it's not quite goad because it could attack you, but you can still force mana dorks to attack. Or you can force, like, I don't know, Thalias to attack into really bad board states. So love having things like that. Coiling Oracle also was not in the Jump Scare Precon, which seems like a mistake to me. So I'm really glad to have that here as well. Avenger of Zendikar is the only, like, enters ability that I wanted to have on a big creature, just because with Zimone, you're going to be manifesting these things into play, which is going to negate any of your enters the battlefield abilities. but Avenger of Zendikar was one of the better ones like that. Let me see if I can find. So like Meteor Golem was in the IEC Precon, not worth having. Definitely don't want to manifest into that and then flip up your 3/3 that costs 7 mana. Kefnet the Mindful, other things like that that were in the IEC Precon just were not amazing. So what we get access to is this beautiful landfall package between the two decks, and then the best haymakers from all of them. I left Tromacratus in the final mashup deck as well, just because he holds a special place in mine and my brother's heart. It's a Thoughtcast favorite, if you will. But again, we want things like this, where you can flip them over and not worry about missing out on any enters the battlefield triggers. So love having these. This was a really fun deck to craft. It took a lot of thought into what I was cutting. I actually went through, and I'll leave it tagged like this so that you can see it if you go to the deck list. But what I did is I went through and I categorized these by landfall and face down cards. So what we're left with is 23 landfall cards and 14 face down cards. So it's a little more landfall than it is face down, but man, you get access to really cool things like Death Mist Raptor in this deck, just because you're playing Zimone in the command zone. So turning things face up, which includes Zimone's ability, you just get to Eternal Witness every turn from that. A lot of the new cards for the jump scare deck were really, really cool as well, like Glitch Interpreter, which is a 3-mana 2/3 that when it enters, if you don't control a face down permanent, you manifest Dread, return it to its hand, and then when one or more colorless creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, you just draw a card. So you get a lot of card advantage for having the face down engine, but then you get the high end of being able to ramp into things like Tromacratus, like World Spine Worm, or flipping over any of those things with Zimone. It's a really cool deck. I would encourage you, jump on the Moxfield link that I have posted in the description below, give it a couple play tests, and let me know if you're going to be building this PreCon mashup. This has been the MTG Thoughtcast. I'm Joseph, signing off. Thanks for watching.